People, Deluded, I'm back again. Now, I'm a bit late to the party. I did see in the comments that Arsenal allegedly, what I mean by that is someone in my comments mentioned it. Arsenal and Werder Bremen allegedly are trying to form a partnership. Now, I'm very careful because it's not official. I don't know it. I'm not in either room. I'm just going based on some of Mertesacker's comments, or allegedly Mertesacker went to go and see Werder Bremen and speak with them in regards to what, let me paraphrase, what more or less can be done in terms of, can we form a partnership in terms of loaning, I assume loaning out young players out there, possibly, I wouldn't say first option over there young players, but maybe just general tips in regards to academy development. How do they develop their players? Because I mean, Arsenal, Werder Bremen, England and Germany, their coaches probably have similarities, but they probably look at things differently. So for an English coach looking from a German outlook, that might give us a boost of developing our own players, and vice versa for German lads. So it's probably sharing information, just strategic partnerships, leaning on each other, that's more it. But obviously the big one would possibly be utilising the stature of the club to house our young players. When you look at the likes of Nelson and Emil Smith-Rowe, who have gone out there, Amici and Saka are two you're looking at to possibly kick on to bigger things in the next 18 months. SV Nketiah and Joe Willock are two you probably expect to go out on loan and try and be playing week in, week out first team football somewhere if it's not going to be here. So, and there's many other names. So if we can get them a house where someone like Werder Bremen, I'd be up for it. Bremen haven't got the biggest of squads. They've got some talent. They've got the Eggestein brothers. They've got some talent there, and some of their matches are very enjoyable, to be fair with you. They've got young Josh Sargent, the American lad. They've also got a 40-year-old or so in Claudio Pizarro as well in their team. So they're not the biggest squad. They've got some interesting players in the side. For a club like them, it would make sense. They haven't got the biggest budget. Obviously, they have money to spend, but they haven't got the biggest budget. So if they can get players on loan from an English club or anywhere, they'll take it, especially at a time where a lot of these German clubs are clearly doing the groundwork, trying to poach young players from England to join them and get them on loan and utilise them, similar to how English, well, we weren't getting them on loan, but how English clubs are exploiting the youth market sort of thing. And also, I've just come up with it as well, where the Bremen potentially could ask Arsenal for information on not only Arsenal, well, not Arsenal play, well, Arsenal players for loan, but possibly there could be players that, I don't know, there could be Morgan Rogers of West Brom, or Jude Bellingham of Birmingham, or just any talented young player at City, just a dossier on potential players to go for or to exploit if their contracts are running out or whatever. Like, I'm not sure of his contract, but for instance, Chelsea's Mark Guéhi, I think he reminds me of Rudiger. I think he's a decent player. I'm not sure for his potential and things like that, but it's probably impossible to make it at Chelsea for a lot of these players. So he could be someone they identify, for example. So it could be a good strategic partnership. Obviously, it's good for me. I'm happy to see Mertesacker do this as well, because he's still a relative novice to the job, and he's just getting better and better. And we know he got promoted as well, and he's doing his thing. He's a German man. It would make sense for him to utilise his contact list or his contacts at his old club or out there. And if he can do his thing and help us get strategic partnerships to utilise so our young players can be given a platform to improve and play under a manager and a team that's going to give them chances, then I'm all up for it, man. Apparently he's just exploring the role, but we'll see what happens, man. It could be a good one, and for me, if it does happen, which I do want it to happen, I'd try and the two players I'd be looking at without a doubt would be SV Nketiah. If he's not gonna, it's a tough one, Eddie, because Wells is going to go on. Wells is looking like he's going to leave permanently, people. You're looking at depth. If something happens to Lacazette and Aubameyang, who plays? But realistically, they're going to be fit. How much football will Eddie get? Eddie's not going to improve if he's doing what he's doing this season, in that he can only take chances given to him, but he's more or less on the bench and travelling for depth purposes, where if he could go somewhere like Bremen, if it's not going to happen here, where he can train and realistically be given a chance to play week in, week out, score some goals at the top level, improve, come back a confident player, and then have another crack at the whip trying to break into the Arsenal team, I'm all for that. Joe Willock as well. I think obviously with Ramsey, and it might be even El Nene leaving, spaces will open up. But allegedly, if you listen to Ornstein, we're trying to get another box-to-box midfielder in. We might even sign another. Obviously, Guendouzi, Xhaka, and whoever are going to play ahead of Joe Willock as well. Maitland-Niles is a midfielder and hasn't even got a look in there, and he'd probably be ahead of Willock. So again, as much as I like Willock, I want him to go out there and play football. So if he could go somewhere like Bremen, where it doesn't matter that it's SV Nketiah or Joe Willock anymore, they're just two players part of the squad fighting to play on the match day, having a realistic chance to do so. It's going to improve them playing week in, week out, because Joe Willock, I think he's a good player, man. It's difficult to break in at Arsenal, but I think he can dance past players. He can play the simple game, getting it out his feet, trying to dictate the game sort of thing. I think he's gonna have a decent career, man. He's developed physically, but he needs to go and play. I think under 23 football, him and Eddie, they're the two that are. Amici, Saka, they're ballers, and for me, they're two of the best here. But I'd say Joe Willock and Eddie are two players that can't afford to be playing on the 23 football next year. Shafe as well, but these two in particular to this conversation. But it'd be nice, man, if we could find a house where players would play. You look at Rhys Nelson. He's had for me, I say a good season because he's bound to have learnt a lot. But it's been a season of ups and downs for him. He's had good ones where he's scoring and playing in and out the side and things like that. If we can find a home where he'd have better joy for in terms of playing in Bremen, you look at Eddie, Joe, Emil Smith-Rowe, Nelson, probably Medley as well. Probably the ones that the club kind of love and rate highly that need to go and play football. If we can find a house for them to play and stuff, then it would make sense. But that's all I've got to say. Let me just type in Mertesacker's thing, try to bring up something if there's any official quotes for context. Mertesacker. Here we go. This is on Football London. You see, he spent time with their technical director, Thomas Sarf, and discussed the possibility. But his own words, which he's speaking to Bild, I cannot say that, the German-based newspaper, Werder Bremen have a very good youth system, and with Thomas, someone who brings in new structures. So what does that tell you? They've got a good youth system. There's possibly points we could take to improve our own, and possibly different ways of working sort of thing. I talked to him and I thought about what we can do together as far as players are concerned. You see, the possible idea of floating between loaning players. He then went on to say, allegedly on the official website, we exchanged views. The contact with Werder is still so good that you like to drop by for 2 days, talk about promoting talent together and bringing along colleagues from London. So what does that tell you? Collaborating, dossier, sharing reports. And he went on as well. Also in the future, this idea should continue to flourish at various levels. Connections between Arsenal and Werder are conceivable. Thomas is the technical director responsible for coaching education in Werder's Centre of Excellence. It can be useful for us in London. We can send coaches to Bremen and vice versa. Ultimately, both clubs can benefit from it. And then scrolling down now. In our 23s, you'll be introduced to the men's area as well as in Bremen. However, you only play against peers at an average age of 18, 19. Although you have good opponents, draws with men's teams does not exist. In Germany, you are challenged in the regional league or even better in the third league. Therefore, the step from our under-23 into the first team is even bigger because the next higher level is the Premier League. Therefore, for us, Arsenal loans in the Bundesliga are very attractive. So word for word, what I've actually been saying in this whole vid, what do you see from that? Potentially exploiting the fact that they're a Bundesliga club with not necessarily the biggest and stuff to house our players so they can play football, sharing excellence collaborating between our coaching ideas and philosophies, between back and forth for our coaches to Germany and their coaches here, just generally seeing what can be done and just ultimately just keeping good relations, because you can't, football is about who you know at all levels, so you can imagine how exaggerated it is at that elite level. It all probably comes down to who's in your notebook, who can you call upon, and your people relations. I'm sure there's many scouts that can, even at Arsenal, they've probably been many scouts that are very good at finding players, could have found us the next Messi and etc. But if they're not necessarily good people, or they don't know the right people at Arsenal to influence to try and get this one over the line, you're going to miss out. And these are the sort of things that happen at grassroots and at top level. That's just one example. That goes for coaches, agents, players themselves, just about anyone, people. But I'm all for strategic partnerships and I'm all for young players, so this is something I'd like to hear. There's nothing more for me to add, so I'm going to keep it pushing on that one, people. Deluded out.